You just salted your food before you even tasted it. You do this every single time you eat. You have never once stopped to ask why. Somewhere between your childhood and right now, your tongue was quietly sorted into one of three groups. You did not vote on this. Nobody sat you down and told you. And one of those groups is experiencing the exact same plate of food as a completely different meal from everyone else at the table. By the end of this video, you will know your own number. I am going to walk you through 5 real checks, the same kind scientists use in actual labs, and you are going to score yourself as we go. Stay with me, because your final number explains something about your own brain that most people go their entire life never learning. Here is the promise. You will finally understand why some people gag at broccoli while others eat it plain, straight off the stalk. And you will find out, using real evidence, whether you belong to the rarest group of all. 1 in 4 people alive right now are walking around with a hidden trait they have mistaken for a personality quirk their whole life. Before we start scoring you, you need one piece of context first. In 1991, a researcher at Yale named Linda Bartoshuk gave this group an actual name. She called them supertasters. Not because they enjoy food more than you do, because their tongues are physically built differently from yours, in a way you can measure. If you have ever wondered why family dinners keep turning into small arguments over spice level, this is why. It was never really about being picky. It was quiet biology, hiding in plain sight on the surface of your own tongue this entire time. Before we go further, do me one small favor. If you already know the exact food you avoid at every dinner, drop it in the comments right now. I want to see how many of us are secretly fighting the same enemy on our plates. Think about the last group dinner you sat through. Someone ordered the spiciest thing on the menu, laughing the whole way through it. Someone else pushed their plate away after 2 bites, apologizing for being difficult. You probably assumed that was just personality. Confidence on one side, sensitivity on the other. What if it was never personality at all? What if it was hardware, sitting quietly on 2 different tongues the entire time, deciding the outcome before either person even picked up a fork? Now let's start scoring. Check number 1 is the simplest of the 5. Think about black coffee, dark chocolate, or a raw Brussels sprout. If any of those taste sharply, almost painfully bitter to you, not just unpleasant, but genuinely intense, give yourself 1 point. Here is why this actually matters scientifically. Bitterness is not one universal experience shared by everyone equally. Researchers measure it using a compound called PROP, short for propylthiouracil. Some people taste almost nothing when it touches their tongue. Some people recoil instantly, like they touched a hot stove by accident. That gap between the two is not exaggeration or drama. It is measurable, in a real lab, down to the exact concentration required to trigger a reaction. This whole field actually started by complete accident. Back in 1931, a chemist named Arthur Fox was working with a related compound called PTC in his lab. Some dust from the powder drifted through the air. A colleague standing nearby complained it tasted intensely bitter. Fox tasted nothing at all. That one strange disagreement between 2 scientists became the seed of everything you are learning right now. There is a reason bitterness earned this much attention from scientists in the first place. In nature, bitter almost always means dangerous. Toxic plants, spoiled meat, and poisonous alkaloids tend to register as intensely bitter to a human tongue. A stronger reaction to bitterness was likely a survival advantage once, long before supermarkets and safety labels existed. Your ancestors who recoiled hardest from a bitter root probably lived a little longer than the ones who did not. That old survival wiring is still sitting inside you right now, completely unchanged. It just has nothing dangerous left to warn you about most days. So instead of saving your life, it quietly ruins your relationship with kale. Check number 2. Think back to the last time you had unsweetened grapefruit juice. Did you sip it calmly? Or did your whole face change shape without your permission? If it hit you as intensely sour and bitter at the same time, almost aggressive, that is another point for you. Researchers actually use grapefruit juice as an early screening tool, before they even bring out the lab compounds. Your face in that exact moment is data. It tells on you before you say a single word out loud. Check number 3. And this one quietly explains a habit you have probably never questioned. Do you reach for salt automatically, on almost everything, before you even taste it first? Not because you love salt itself. Because normal seasoning feels muted to you, like someone turned the volume down without asking. This sounds backwards at first glance. You would expect a supertaster to need less seasoning, not more of it. But bitterness and saltiness interact on your tongue in a strange, quiet tug-of-war. Salt can actually mute the bitter signal that is drowning out everything else for you. Your hand reaching for the shaker before the first bite might genuinely be your body defending itself. Check number 4 is about pain, not really about flavor at all. Think about spicy food, black pepper, or a shot of hard liquor. Does the burn feel disproportionate, like it lingers and spreads more than it seems to for everyone else at the table? This is not you being dramatic for attention. Capsaicin, the compound inside chili peppers, does not just trigger taste receptors. It also triggers actual pain receptors, and those pain receptors sit right next to your taste buds on the tongue. If you have more taste buds crowded into that same space, you feel more burn from the exact same bite. It is simple geometry playing out on the surface of your tongue, nothing more mysterious than that. Check number 5 is one you may have never physically noticed about yourself before today. Look in a mirror, under bright light, at the very tip of your tongue. Are there visibly small, dense bumps, packed close together, almost like tiny mushrooms crowding each other for space? Those bumps are called fungiform papillae, and each one holds several taste buds hidden underneath it. Scientists actually stain the tongue blue in a lab setting, because those bumps resist the dye and stay pink, standing out sharply against the blue background around them. Under that exact test, some people count fewer than 20 bumps inside a small circle. Others count more than 40 in that same identical space. Here is a detail that reframes your entire childhood, if you think about it. Children are born with more taste buds than adults carry later in life, and those extra buds fade slowly with age. That picky phase almost every kid goes through was never pure stubbornness. A 5-year-old's tongue may genuinely be registering a plate of vegetables far more intensely than a parent's tongue sitting across the table from them. By the time you reach your 60s, many of those receptors have quietly faded on their own. Food that once felt overwhelming can start tasting mild and manageable instead. Your own relationship with your dinner plate has likely been shifting under you for years, without you ever noticing the change happening. Now add up your score honestly. If you landed on 4 or 5, stay right here, because what comes next explains your entire relationship with food. If you landed on 0, 1, or 2, you are not broken in any way. You are simply living on the other end of a very real spectrum, one that comes with its own surprising advantages I am about to walk you through. Here is the twist most people never actually hear about. None of this was designed by accident or chance. In 2003, scientists finally located the specific gene responsible, called TAS2R38, sitting quietly on chromosome 7 inside your own cells. You inherited one version of it from each parent, the exact same way you inherited your eye color from them. Some combinations of that gene mute bitterness almost completely, like a dial turned all the way down. Other combinations turn the volume all the way up instead. And the density of those little bumps on your tongue plays its own separate role on top of the gene itself. which is why two supertasters can still taste identical food slightly differently from each other. Here is something almost nobody expects. Two ordinary, average-tasting parents can absolutely produce a supertaster child without either parent seeing it coming. The genetics shuffle in ways that skip a generation, hide, and then resurface again, quietly, inside one single kid at the dinner table who suddenly refuses every green vegetable in sight. Roughly 25% of people carry the version that mutes bitterness almost completely. About 50% land somewhere in the comfortable middle. And the remaining 25%, the supertasters, experience bitterness at an intensity the rest of the room cannot even imagine, let alone relate to. Think about that fact for a second, slowly. Right now, in any room of 4 people, statistically one of them is tasting a genuinely different meal than everyone else around that same table. Same plate, same fork, same exact bite. A completely different signal reaching 2 separate brains at once. And here is where this gets personal, for a lot of you watching right now. Women are measurably more likely to be supertasters than men are. If you are a woman who has spent years quietly being labeled a picky eater by family or friends, there is a real chance your tongue was simply built with more receivers than the people judging you across the table. Ancestry plays its own role here too. People with African, Asian, or South American ancestry show higher rates of supertasting compared to people of European ancestry. Your family's food culture, the spice levels your grandmother cooked with instinctively, may connect all the way back to biology, not just tradition passed down through recipes. In the 1960s, a researcher named Roland Fisher noticed something else entirely. He linked bitter taste sensitivity not just to food preference, but to body type and even personality traits. His work was early and rough by today's standards, but it planted a question researchers are still chasing today. Does your tongue quietly shape more of your life than just what you order off a menu? Now for the part that genuinely surprised the researchers themselves, decades later. You would assume being a supertaster is purely a burden to carry. Bitter vegetables ruined forever, coffee undrinkable, wine tasting like straight poison in a glass. But the actual data tells a stranger, more layered story than that. Supertasters, especially women, tend to have a measurably lower body mass index than non-tasters do. They show less craving for heavily sweet, high-fat foods, because those foods already feel intense enough on their own without any extra sugar added. Their cardiovascular profiles, on average, tend to look measurably better too, across multiple studies. There is a reason supertasters often avoid alcohol and cigarettes more than everyone else as well. Ethanol registers as an oral irritant on their tongue, not a pleasant warmth. A cigarette does not taste like relaxation to them. It tastes like a small, sharp assault every single time they try it. There is a darker layer underneath that sweet story, though. One worth knowing honestly. One long-term study followed older women for years and found something researchers genuinely did not expect going in. Supertasters in that group showed a 58% higher rate of cancer diagnosis compared to non-tasters, even though their vegetable intake looked nearly identical on paper. Nobody fully understands why yet, and that gap is important to sit with honestly. One theory points to the same taste receptor gene showing up in tissue all throughout your entire body, not just your tongue, quietly influencing systems that have nothing obvious to do with flavor at all. Think about where else taste receptors have turned up in recent research. Your gut lining carries them. Your airway carries them. Even parts of your immune system carry versions of them. A gene you inherited to help you avoid bitter poison berries may now be quietly involved in conversations happening deep inside your own body, in places that have nothing to do with dinner at all. This is exactly why researchers are cautious about calling supertasting purely good or purely bad. It is not a simple upgrade or a simple flaw. It is a different configuration entirely, with its own strengths sitting right next to its own risks, wired into you before you took your first bite of solid food. And then there is the twist. Almost nobody watching this expects to hear. During the height of a recent respiratory outbreak, researchers tracked nearly 2,000 adults with regular exposure to the virus at work. Supertasters recovered fastest of all three groups by far, averaging around 5 days of symptoms total. Regular tasters averaged closer to 13 days instead. Non-tasters averaged over 3 full weeks, and supertasters in that entire group had 0 hospitalizations recorded. Sit with that fact for a second, seriously. A trait that decides whether broccoli ruins your dinner may also be quietly involved in how your own immune system responds to a virus circling the room. Your tongue and your immune defenses may be running on overlapping wiring that nobody designed on purpose. If any restaurant chefs or wine professionals are watching this right now, here is a detail for you specifically. Many professional tasters in those industries actually test as supertasters. Their careers exist because their tongue picks up subtle notes an average taster's tongue physically cannot detect at all. What feels like a burden at a family dinner can become a genuine professional edge in the right room. Picture a sommelier swirling wine under bright restaurant lights. To most people at that table, it is just red wine, pleasant and simple. To that sommelier, it may be an entire layered map of tannin, acid, and bitterness, arriving all at once, in sharp detail nobody else at the table can access. The same tongue that makes broccoli unbearable at home might be the reason someone builds an entire career around a wine list. There is a psychological layer to all of this too, worth naming honestly. Some researchers connect supertasting to something called food neophobia, a stronger hesitation around new or unfamiliar foods. If you have ever been the friend who orders the same safe dish at every restaurant, your tongue may be quietly steering that choice long before your personality gets any credit for it. Here is where the deeper question comes in, the one actually worth sitting with tonight. If a supertaster and a non-taster sit down at the exact same table, are they even eating the same reality together? Same food, same fork. 2 entirely different experiences happening inside 2 different brains, at the exact same moment, and neither person has any real way to prove it to the other one. This is not really a video about food anymore, if you think about it honestly. It is a reminder that your entire perceived world, the one that feels so obviously true and shared with everyone else, is filtered through hardware you never personally chose. Color, sound, pain, and yes, taste, all pass through a nervous system built slightly differently inside every single person alive. If this kind of thing genuinely fascinates you, the way your own brain quietly shapes your entire reality without ever asking permission first, subscribe now so the next one actually finds you. I dig into one hidden mechanism exactly like this every single week, and most of them are stranger than this one. So go back and check your final score honestly one more time. If you landed on 4 or 5, you now understand why certain dinners have felt like a quiet battle your entire life. It was never really about willpower. It was wiring, present since long before you could even talk. If you landed low instead, you now understand why some people at your table seem to be performing when they visibly wince at a vegetable you barely even notice yourself. They are not exaggerating for attention or sympathy. Their internal signal really is louder than yours, every single time. And if you are still not sure where you actually landed, that uncertainty is worth exploring too. Notice what you reach for first at your next meal. Notice whose face changes at the table and whose does not. You are collecting more evidence about your own biology than you realize, one ordinary dinner at a time. Try the grapefruit juice test this week if you can find some. Watch your own face in the moment it hits your tongue, honestly. without deciding the answer in advance. Ask the people you eat with most often to try it too, right next to you. You might learn more about the people at your own table in 30 seconds than you have in years of eating together. None of this makes anyone more sensitive or more difficult on purpose. It simply means the plate in front of you was never neutral ground to begin with. It was always going to land differently depending on whose tongue was doing the tasting, long before the food ever reached the table. Somewhere between a quarter and a half of everyone you have ever shared a meal with has been quietly experiencing a different dinner than you this entire time. Nobody announces it out loud. Nobody can fully prove it happened afterward. You just reach for the salt, without ever once stopping to ask why your hand moved first.